Hi, I'm Joy. I work at the Quilting Bee here in Spokane Valley, and today I'm going to show you the Brother Luminaire and the special software that's incorporated in the Brother Luminaire and the different things that you can do with it. This is our Brother Luminaire. It's the Luminaire 2. It does have a scanning feature because there is a camera that is located right here on the left side of the needle. And this is our scan board that we use to scan. It can be drawings, it can be printouts of cartoon pages. I have downloaded this from the internet. I just went to Wales and downloaded a picture of the whales. You do want to try and get defined lines on here, so coloring book pages really makes a difference on the quality of the scan. So what these green things are here is they are magnets, and we use those to keep the paper down flat. So I'm just going to remove all of those. Sometimes you may have a thicker piece of paper or something, so you'll want to use all of the magnets. I am just going to use 4 of them because that's all I need for this paper right here. You want to make sure you do not cover up this part of the scanning mat because that's what the camera needs to use in order to read the mat. So as you can see, my paper is down flat. I'm just going to slide this on my scanning frame. So when you first turn on the machine, it's going to come up into this page here, which is our home page. We're going to go into My Design Center, which is the software on the Luminaire 2. It's going to tell you that the frame is going to move just so that you make sure that everything's out of the way. I didn't need to put my scanning frame on there first. So whenever the machine is calibrating, you don't want a frame on there, either a hoop or a scanning frame. So now I'm going to go into scan, and that's going to be this little leaf right here. And I'm just going to scan a line design right there. So I'm going to put my frame on. And then I'm just going to do line design, and the machine is going to ask me if I want to scan. I'm going to scan. And you want to make sure there's nothing in the way of this. You don't want any thread in the machine because the camera could read that. So the camera is right under here. Whenever the frame is moving up, the camera's actually scanning. When it comes back down, it's just moving, so it's not really scanning right now. Now it's scanning. So this one, because it's a fairly large frame, it's going to take 3 passes. And this is actually a computer, so it is going to take, it does sometimes take a while to think about things. So once it is done scanning, you're going to see that it's still recognizing. Now it's brought it up. So here's the exact whale design that I have scanned. So what we want to do, when we go to add stitches and fills to this design, we do not want to worry about these green magnets in here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use these 2 little arrows. This machine does come with a pen that is useful for this, but I like using my finger because I feel more accurate with my finger. So I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to bring this red box up until it just encompasses the whale. I want to bring this one down. I don't want to cut into my whale. I just want to get any extras that might be on the frame out of there. And I like what I've got here, so I'm going to press OK. Now here's my whale as it's set to have stitches set to it and start to stitch out. So I like the way that this looks. I'm just going to press set, and now you can see this is on my screen here. The first thing I want to do is, because I'm going to be doing several different stitches in here, I want to save this into memory so that I can set different types of stitches, fill stitches and satin stitches and running stitches to it. So I'm going to save it into my machine memory. You just press memory and into the machine. So that's saved that. So the next time I would want to bring up this design, that just means I don't have to scan it again. I can go into my memory and I can bring it up. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of the green boxes in here. So I'm just going to lighten those, and you can see now that those are gone. So I'm ready to start my adding my stitches to it. So these first 4 boxes right here are line designs, line drawings. And if you go into here, you can see you have a satin stitch, a running stitch, a bean stitch, candle wicking stitch, these other 4 stitches. Then we also have more decorative stitches built in. So if I wanted any of my lines to turn into any of these stitches, I could just press one of these, apply it to the line, and then that's what would stitch out. But I think for what I want to do right now is I'm just going to do a triple stitch. And whenever I'm scanning anything and adding stitches to it, I like to change the color so that I know that I've actually made the change on the machine. So I'm going to choose a red pink color, and like you see, I have my triple stitch set in there. I'm going to press OK, and you can see right up here I've selected the color red and my triple stitch. Now what I have to do is to actually put the stitches onto the wale, and sometimes it's a little bit, this is kind of small, so I'm going to make it a little bit larger. We can do this, and I can make this wale much larger so it's easier for me to see. And then if I press my little hand here, I can move around on the screen, move the design around on the screen so I can see it. Now when I take my paint can, and I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to touch, and I don't know if you can see that these lines are now turning red. So every line that's not connected to another line has to be touched in order for it to add stitches to it. If all the lines were connected and you touched it, then everything would turn red, and that would be, the whole design would be a triple stitch. But I don't want it all a triple stitch, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do all these little lines in here. I'm going to turn them red, and I want it just a little bit bigger in order to get in these little spots. Now, I do want this line right here to be a triple stitch, but if I press it, you can see the whole thing is going to turn red because it's connected to the fluke right there. So I can fix that. I'm going to go ahead and touch this little one down here. No, I didn't want to do that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go back to my eraser here. I'm going to make this even bigger so that I can get close in here. And if I take my eraser, and you can change it to a square or a circular eraser, you can change the size of it. This is the actual size that you're going to get. What I can do is I can use my pen or my finger, and I can just come in here. I'm going to use the pen so I can get just a little bit closer. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put the pen down where you hear the click. Oop, that's way too big. I forgot I am enlarged there. That's why I had such a big one. But I do need that large. So, do need that large again. So I took away too much of it, so I'm going to go into here. I'm just going to do a straight line, press OK, and I'm going to draw that line back. I'm not getting it. You have to make sure the lines are connected. So my lines are connected. So I'm going to come out of that. I'm going to go back to my smaller size, and I'm going to go back in here with my paint can, and I'm going to, whoops, I need a bigger size. I'm going to touch those two lines right there. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my smaller side. I didn't get this line right there. And go back to my smaller size now. So all of my, the lines on his chin are going to be just a triple stitch. So now what I need to do is I want to go in and do a fill stitch on this top of the whale because I want that to be filled in. We could do that in applique, but for today I'm just going to do a fill stitch on it. These buttons right here are all of our fill stitches, and you can tell by this little red box and the lines that that's what that is. So if I go into my fill stitches, we can go into this last box here and we have 42 different fill stitches. Now I just want, these are separate fill stitches I'm going to use for later, but for right now this is our satin stitch and that's the one I'm going to use. So I'm going to change that to a different color. I'm going to press OK, and I need to press my fill paint can or bucket here in order to fill that. So if I press that there, you can see now that part of the whale is going to be filled in with a satin stitch. Okay, I didn't do the eye yet just because I want the eye to be on top of that satin stitch. So now I can go back and do that eye. I have this already set as my triple stitch, and I'm going to do the eye with a triple stitch. So if I press my paint can, I actually want to enlarge that a little bit so I can see it better. I'm going to touch this line, which turned red, this line, and this line here. Now that the outside of the eye is all going to be a triple stitch. But I do want, on the inside of the eye, I do want to make that a satin stitch. So I can go back and do that separately. So if I go back into my fill stitches, it is a blue right there. I'm just going to touch the inside of that eye. Oh, I have to touch my paint can. Inside of that eye with my fill stitch. Okay, and then I want to do this other part of the eye. I'm going to do that with a different color. So if I go back into my fill stitches, I'm just going to change the color so that I can see that I have changed it to a different color and the stitch is actually there. So my paint can is still highlighted, so I'm just going to touch that, and now that when I actually stitch this out, I'm going to make that a different color than the inside of the eye. Okay, now I'm going to take it back smaller because we want to I want to do a satin stitch around the outside of the whale. So if I go into here, I'm going to press my satin stitch, and I want that to be, I'm just going to change it to a different color so you can see it. I'm going to touch my paint can for my line properties, and I'm going to touch that. And now you can see that, well, it might be hard to see, but all the other lines have been stitched out, have been set to be a satin stitch. So the outside of the whale is a satin stitch. Now this is pretty much what I want it to look like. So what I'm going to do is, I'm happy with this design. I'm going to say next. And you're going to see that there are still some changes I can make into this whale, but this is technically what our whale is going to look like. Obviously, I will not stitch him out in these colors. So I could change the density, I can change the direction of the fill stitch, I can change the understitching, I can change the diagonal properties of it, but I'm okay with it right now. So I'm going to go into here. It's going to tell me that I'm going to exit my design center. I'm going to go over into the embroidery side of the machine. So I'm going to press OK, and now I'm into the embroidery side of the screen. I'm ready to stitch this out, but I want this whale to look like it's swimming in the ocean, so I want to add a quilting stitch to it. So I'm going to just press add. I'm going to go back into my design center, and I'm going to go into my memory. I'm going to pull up that whale. Remember, I said we needed to save that in case we ever needed to use it again. I haven't changed the size of this at all, so it's going to be the same size as the embroidery that I've already taken over to the embroidery side, but I don't want to stitch any more of the whale. I only want to stitch the outside of the whale. So here I'm going to go into my fill stitches, and I'm going to open up my fills. There are the 42 fills here, and there is one that actually looks like water. That's going to be this one right here. I like that. And I do want to change the color once again just so I can see what it's going to look like. So I'll just change it to a purple there. and I'm going to select now, and all I have to do is I have to press my bucket key and then press the outside of the whale. There's my waves. However, I don't want the whale look like he's swimming upwards. I want the waves to be going with him rather than against him. But there's no way to change that in here, so I'm just going to go into my next screen where I have more changes here. I can change the size of the waves. I can change I can make it look different rather than more uniform. And here's where I'm going to change the angle on it. I'm going to switch it to 90 degrees so that it looks like the whale is swimming in the water and not trying to jump out of the water. Okay, I like this design. I'm going to set it. And there you see, there's my design right there. So the first thing that's going to stitch is going to be the different colors of the whales, and then it's going to stitch the quilting stitch of the whale. What I would do with this is I would put some batting underneath my fabric and make it look like it's a 3D effect on that. So that is what my design center does as far as the things that you can do with it. There are many other different things you can do with it. You can scan pictures and actually add stitches to them. That's a really nice effect. But I really like having this camera here that allows us to use that scan feature. Once I go into embroidery, you can see here are all the stitches. This is the way it's going to stitch out. If I don't like the way it's going to stitch out, I can actually go into my edit screen, and here I can change the way that the order that with the stitches stitch out. I'm okay with the way it's stitching out for this one, but this is where you would go if you wanted to change the order of the stitch out. I will stitch this design out, and we will see that come up in a little bit. Okay, so here we are, we're ready to stitch out the design. I have a stabilizer in my hoop. I put a heavyweight cutaway or tearaway because this is a fairly dense design. I'm also going to put down a piece of batting just to give it kind of like a 3D effect. I might end up putting this in a quilt, I'm not sure yet. And I have ironed my background fabric with Best Press, and I always like to put a fusible woven on the back of any of my designs. Now this is in black, it does come in white also. It is an OESD product. On one side it's flat, and on the other side it has the glue on it. So once I have Best Pressed my fabric, then I spritz this fusible woven onto the back of the fabric until it's pressed on there good. Now that I have my design up here, I always like to go in and add a basting box because I do not hoop my fabric, I only hoop my stabilizer. So I let the basting box hold my fabric to the stabilizer. That way you don't waste as much fabric and you don't get hoop burn on your fabric. So in order to get to the basting box, we go into our layout, and right here you'll see a box with a flower around it, and you press that, and then when you go close this layout back out, you see that's going to be your first stitch. So the basting box is going to be the first stitch, which attaches your fabric to your stabilizer. I could also do it once, put down my batting and then do my fabric, but I know this is in the center of my hoop, so I'm just going to put it all down together just like this. And you see, even though I have used that black fusible woven, it does not show through on my fabric. So if I was using a lighter fabric, I would have used my white fusible woven. Alrighty, we're ready to start. I'm just going to put my hoop in. Got a few little things in here on my fabric. It's going to tell me the carriage is going to move. I do need to thread my machine, which is very easy on this machine. We're just going to follow the solid lines on this machine. It has its own needle threader, which is very easy to use. Cut off that thread, press the button, and your needle is threaded. So now I'm ready to go. All I have to do is press my start button here. Okay, so I'm stitching down the basting box, and as I'm stitching, I just want to make sure that my fabric stays flat. Like, once again, I said I did not hoop my fabric. I don't like to hoop my fabric if I can avoid it. Sometimes you do have to hoop the fabric, but on this one we don't. So once this basting box is around here, this is going to be securely stitched to my stabilizer, so I don't have to worry about anything slipping. Okay, so that's my basting box. You can see that it's stitched all the way around, so it's not going anywhere. So now I'm ready for my first color. It shows up right here on the fabric. This one is going to take 36 minutes, so it is quite a long stitch out because it is all satin stitched. Okay, so our design is finished stitching out. It was 87,851 stitches. It cuts the final thread for me, so all I have to do is lift the knob on the arm, pull it out, and you can see what a beautiful stitch out that did. That satin stitch came out so nicely. If I wanted to, I could have increased the density in that, but I think that just came out perfectly. The waves are just exactly the way I want to, so I could take this out of the hoop and put that into a quilt. I could make other blocks on there. It was very nice because I did go through several bobbins, but this bobbin winder has its own motor, so it winds, you can wind as it's stitching, so I lost no time in that. Be sure and come down and see us at Quilting Bee to check out the new Luminaire 2, which is a fantastic machine. Thank you.